This program is brought to you by PersonalLifeMedia.com. Living Dialogues is sponsored by Audible. Bestsellers in philosophy, spirituality, and self-help. Download your free audiobook from over 40,000 titles. Sign up for your risk-free trial at audiblepodcast.com/living. Join today. Cancel anytime in the first 2 weeks and keep your free book as your gift. You're going to love being an Audible listener.
I'm Gangaji, and I've just been a wonderful hour speaking with Duncan Campbell and his beautiful show, Keeping the Flame of Truth Alive. And I'm really honored to be a part of it, and I'm grateful that this is alive and functioning so beautifully. What a great mind you have. How much you can hold in your mind. That's great. Such a great connection.
From time immemorial, beginning with indigenous councils and ancient wisdom traditions, through the work of Western visionaries such as Plato, Galileo, and quantum physicist David Bohm, mutually participatory dialogue has been seen as the key to evolving and transforming consciousness, evoking a flow of meaning, a dia flow of logos, meaning, beyond what any one individual can bring through alone. So join us now, as together with you, the active deep listener, we evoke and engage in living dialogues. Welcome to Living Dialogues. I'm your host, Duncan Campbell, and with me for this particular dialogue, I'm truly delighted to have as my guest, Gangaji, author of The Diamond in Your Pocket, Discovering Your True Radiance, with a foreword by Eckhart Tolle. Gangaji was born Toni Roberson, grew up in Mississippi, and like many of her contemporaries, searched for fulfillment through relationships, career, motherhood, political activism, and spiritual practice. Her search ended in 1990 when she met Sri Punjaji, a student of Sri Ramana Maharshi, on the banks of the Ganges River in India, and the floodgates of self-recognition opened. Today, Gangaji is a teacher and author who travels the world, offering her teacher's invitation to fully recognize the absolute freedom and unchanging peace that is the truth of one's being. And Gangaji, I must say, over the time we've done dialogues together and I attended one of your satsangs, I've come to really, really deeply appreciate you, and I feel a great personal bond and friendship has developed.
Oh, thank you. I feel the same. It's a mystery, isn't it?
It is a mystery, yeah. It's so quickly, in that sense. And one of the things I think is so interesting about it, particularly in my own case, is that we are contemporaries, and we went through many of the same things, looking for enlightenment and so on, including political activism and various other things that we mentioned in a prior dialogue. And so I thought perhaps in this dialogue we might kind of revisit in a little more detail what it is about the transformation that we both feel has happened in us and in our lives when we look back, let's say, on our careers, the moments when we were political activists, when we felt this really deep, sincere need to participate in the political and civic process in order to, quote, change the world. And that, at least speaking for myself, and I felt it intuitively for you, there was a sense of real obligation that if we didn't do it, like who would? And put tremendous amounts of energy and expectation into that. And then in certain particular ways were beaten back by the reality of the political process in a way that showed us that that was not really the deepest way we could approach our lives or our contribution to the planet or to society.
Yes, because I grew up in the South, and my family's from the South forever, and so I was conditioned actually to see black people as subhuman. I grew up in the 40s and 50s, and so I had an awakening, a political awakening in college with a particular professor who had actually come to the South from Harvard to teach, and it just blew open my mind to see how corrupt my conditioning had been.
Mm-hmm.
And in that there was an absolute obligation to stand up. This was 1960, 1962 and 3. And so I became involved, not majorly, but in some way, as much as I could do at the time, with the civil rights movement,
Mm-hmm.
in speaking out, speaking to my family, and marching finally in Memphis with the sanitation strike right before Martin Luther King was killed
Mm-hmm.
there. And it was an obligation, and it was something I felt was really essential for my family karma. And I don't regret any of that. It contributed majorly to me, to my growth, and to be willing to stand up and say, this is wrong, this has to stop now. But then I found,
Mm-hmm.
as I continued it with the anti-war movement then, the Vietnam War was on, and my first husband and I were protesting against that, I found that there was something happening where I was actually seeking for something in my political action that it couldn't give me. And there was a kind of circular motion in the political activism where I was seeking for fulfillment in finding what was wrong with other.
Mm-hmm.
And while that is powerful, and
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't say it didn't always, I mean, it felt good at times to see how wrong other is. It was ultimately unsatisfying, and even worse than that, I could feel it as a weight. And it was much later, 10, 15 years later, that I recognized that for me, and I'm only speaking for myself, that political activism was not the way to go. One thing, I don't think I have the nervous system for it. You have to
Mm-hmm.
you have to really be a fighter for that. And I wanted to discover somehow how we all come together, not how we find out who's wrong and then punish them, and then we're right and can feel a bit good about that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I found in my political activist experience, finally. Not always, but finally. And that's what led me to my spiritual search.
And in my own case, I, looking back on it, feel that there was a felt need to tell the truth, that people needed to know the truth of the manipulations and the machinations that were happening behind the public presentation. And I began to get a self-education in how the media and the newspapers actually are very much influenced by the same economic forces that are not wanting certain kinds of behind-the-scenes manipulations to be exposed. And so they don't expose them. The media
Mm-hmm.
does not expose them. And so you then discover something that happened in Russia. It was very interesting to me that Evgeny Yevtushenko, one of the great Russian poets, came to Colorado, and he was on the campus at the University of Colorado at a time when I met him here. And I had been on the barricades in Russia, as it turned out, when Yeltsin was holed up in the Parliament building, the Russian White House, and I had witnessed firsthand, the standoff there, and I was there with the people who were protecting the White House. And then that night of August 20th, it broke, and the people that had kidnapped